History of disaster management can be defined into three periods. From 1905 to 1920, the liberal state where the Italians had to fend for themselves. From 1920 to 1990, the social state where the government took responsibility for their citizens. And from 1990 to 1992, the neoliberal state where the government provided protection to vulnerable groups, but depended on the rest of the citizens to fend for themselves. In 1992, the National Service of Civil Protection was adopted. This act is a comprehensive group of national, state, local, public, and private institutions. Each different agency has specific tasks and operational structures. The implementation pattern in Italy is a bottom-up approach. The mayor is the primary civil protection authority and is responsible for planning and rescue operations. If the disaster is outside the resources of the municipality, the responsibility escalates sequentially. If the disaster spans across various territories and provinces, coordination is carried out through a multi-level hierarchical organization. One hazard Italy is particularly prone to is earthquakes. In the last century, 120 deaths have occurred, 63 billion euro were spent on damages, and 23 million people were exposed to harm because of earthquakes. Another hazard is the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The Italian government has created an evacuation plan to clear out the people in the direct line of the eruption. The red zone is made up of 18 towns and 600,000 people that will be notified 72 hours in advance. Other hazards in Italy are droughts, floods, and landslides. There are various other organizations that participate in Italy's disaster management besides the government. The private sector can participate in the implementation of civil protection activities and participate in conventions with public and private sectors. Volunteers play a large role in the National Service of Civil Protection. Volunteers fall under the subsection of National Operational Structure and include the National Firefighter Corps, the Armed Forces, the Police Force, and the National Forestry Corps. There is Italian legislation that provides incentives for citizens to volunteer. Italy also has many bilateral agreements as well as regional agreements with other countries. One potential obstacle to effective disaster management is the land and public infrastructure. Due to Italy's large ancient heritage, buildings and public infrastructure are fragile and thus can be damaged in disasters. Another potential obstacle to disaster management in Italy is the underdeveloped municipalities. Since Italy uses a bottom-up approach, it is critical that these municipalities are prepared and equipped to handle disasters, and some are not. Improvement could also be made in communication with the public. Disaster managers could better provide the people with literature on exactly what to do in case of an emergency in the specific region that they live in. Earthquakes have played a large role in shaping policy. In 1968, 1976, and 1980, there were large earthquakes that gave the government incentives to appoint a representative of the central government for relief efforts. These earthquakes provided the public with awareness of how serious earthquakes were to the country of Italy and how mitigation and preparedness efforts needed to be in place. In 1982, revisions to the Basic National Civil Protection Law took place following the 1970 Beltlik Valley earthquake and the 1968 Sicily earthquake. Italy has a long history of disaster management that has led them to where they are today. Their bottom-up approach allows them to handle disaster from the local level. In case of a catastrophic disaster, the government will step in and enact national response. Although there are still some obstacles to effective disaster management, Italy has done a wonderful job with the resources and budget that is provided to protect their citizens. Italian disaster management can only improve.